There is a moment that happens to many of us at this time of year where we start looking back at the intentions that we set for the new year, specifically in what kind of parent we wanted to show up as this year. And we can't help ourselves but to start thinking, I think I fell off track. Now, this is the thing. You didn't actually lose discipline. You just went back to what's familiar. And this is a completely different conversation. So this is what we're going to talk about in this episode. I'm going to explain why this happens and what we can do to get back on track. So, for those who don't know me, my name is Danielle C Baker. I am the founder and CEO of Being Connected. And I'm also a registered early childhood educator with over 20 years experience in the field. And I currently help parents and educators navigate the realities of what parenting is today. But don't get it twisted when you work with me. We're putting the child's needs first. So we're going to need to put the ego and pride aside. And let's get to it. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Talk to Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle C Baker. And before we get started, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to whichever channel you're listening or watching from. And of course, this is season 4. So I do invite you to have a look at the 3 previous seasons. There may be some episodes there that relate to your reality today. They are timeless. So I do invite you to go have a look. And we're going to jump right into this topic when we start feeling like we've gone off track, especially this time of year, with the intentions that we set in the beginning of the year. And I'm going to start off with something simple but very important. And that is that there is a difference between goals and patterns. Now, goals is what we want, and patterns is what we do under pressure. And this is why when it comes to parenting, we often feel like we're falling off track because we very rarely parent when we are not under pressure, right? So parenting is something you do under pressure for sure. So it's very seldom that you start parenting when you're well rested, when you're fully present, and when you're not stressed out. So this is why we often have reactions that we are not necessarily proud of later on because we're falling into patterns that show up when we feel under pressure. Parenting happens when we're tired, overwhelmed, overstimulated, and so we're just juggling way too much all at once. So this is why we revert back to patterns. In these moments, your brain and your body are wired to go back to what's familiar because that's what it knows to do when it's on autopilot. When you're tired, stressed out, overstimulated, your brain goes back to the caveman brain where now you're just in survival mode. So it's not going to take the time to process to say, oh, maybe I am a little too overstimulated or a little too stressed out to be dealing with this right now. I should take a breath or to try to remember that you are not in danger. You're just really stressed out with your kids right now. So this is why you go back to patterns. Your brain is trying to find something that's familiar so it could deal with what it thinks is the danger at that moment. Essentially, your brain is just going back to its default setting. So this is where you're going to raise your voice, where you're going to repeat the same arguments, and you're just basically going to react the way that you don't want to. This is when it is very important to realize that when this happens, you are not failing. We get so hard on ourselves or we judge ourselves very harshly after we've reacted in a way that we're not too proud of. You are not failing. All that's happening is that your nervous system is choosing what it knows. So, in order to be able to bypass that, we need to rewire our nervous system. Another thing that's very important to realize is that our children are not testing our patience. They are triggering our history. So, the reactions that you have has nothing to do with what your children have done. It has everything to do with what that moment represented for you. So when we look at it under that perspective, we stop judging ourselves really harshly and start understanding how our subconscious mind actually works. And this is where the magic is going to happen. So let's shift the lens over here. Patterns are not problems to fix. They are strategies that we developed in order to cope and feel safe at some point in our life. These patterns helped you to smooth things over, to not get hurt, to avoid conflicts, to avoid being seen or heard, or to draw too much attention to you. These are things that you needed at some point in your life. And these will show up as patterns like raising your voice, completely shutting down, disassociating, people pleasing. That's another one. And over explaining is a huge one as well. So these are things that may show up in your parenting as well once you start getting triggered. Your nervous system is never going to forget what made you feel safe when you were going through some hard times early on in your years. So it is going to look for those patterns automatically when you start feeling stressed out. And of course, your children are going to stress you out. This is why logic, when you tell yourself this makes no sense, like why would I still want to do this? Or positive or goal statements don't work because they don't actually change the behavior. We need to rewire our brain to say, okay, this doesn't serve me anymore. This doesn't make me feel safe anymore. And I do not want to be the reason why my children are going to have to develop coping mechanisms for when they're stressed out. We need to change the behavior. So positive affirmations are not going to work for that. You can want to show up differently when you feel triggered, but in that moment, your subconscious mind is going to work a lot faster than logic. It will always choose what's familiar over the best intentions. You're going to feel stuck, not because you don't care or you can't be bothered, but it's because you're trying to change a behavior without really understanding why the pattern is there. When you remove the shame behind the struggle, you're actually leaving room or space for awareness. It stops us from operating from the survival mode and get moves us back into the headspace where we can think and focus and respond instead of reacting. So where do we even begin with this? Right? We're going to be able to change the pattern when we notice the moment before we get triggered and that our pattern takes over. And that unfortunately will take time. Every pattern has a beginning. It's I like to call it its very own big bang when it just something happened, it snapped, and your subconscious mind registered that as this is how I need to react to stay safe. So there is a cue in your body somewhere that starts the pattern. And that's what we need to start noticing. That's where an awareness kicks in. So the very first thing we need to do is figure out what are our cues. We all have our very own cues that we developed throughout our lives. So is it tightness in the chest? Is it a clenched jaw? Do you have shallow breathing? Do you have shakes? Do you have this kind of urgency in your body, that anxiety that kind of starts to fester? You need to figure out what those cues are. And this is the catch. You're not necessarily going to be able to notice it when you're triggered and when you're in that moment. So you do need to give yourself grace. Take time to notice, even if it's after your reaction, to say, okay, whoa, as you're calming down, where am I feeling this in my body right now? When you're able to pinpoint that, whatever that is your entry point. That is the cue that your body registered to protect yourself. And that's why we're going to be able to work on it. The reason why we all miss that entry point or that cue or that point of origin where our patterns began is because we are focusing on the behavior that triggered us, or we're focusing on the trigger itself. We're not understanding how we're physically responding. Our body language is so much stronger than our regular language. We need to be able to pinpoint that in our body. Don't try to fix it immediately. Like I said, it's going to take time. It's like working a new muscle, but give yourself grace, start noticing. And also remember that your responses don't have to be perfect. You may have responded differently. You may not still be too proud, but the fact that you are noticing your patterns, you're noticing the cues, this is what's going to lead you to becoming the parent that you actually want to be for your children. So all you really need to do right now, you don't want to add more stress. You don't want to overwhelm yourself. You don't want to pack on more shame for how you're showing up in your parent as a parent when you are stressed out. All you need to do right now is just notice it. Just noticing is a huge step. So even if it's after you blew up or you shut down, the fact that you're noticing it now, you're already having progress. You're just so much ahead of what you were before. So just notice it, even if it's in the moment, saying there's something happening in me right now. Don't need to find a solution. Don't find the solution. Just the fact that you're noticing there's something in me. Do a scan. That's it. That's all you need to do at this point. And this is why it works, because when you start noticing, you are actually creating just a tiny little bit more space within your nervous system. And it's in that space that you're going to have just that tiny little bit more time to stop reacting. Eventually, it's going to build up. You're going to be able to get to that. But it's in that tiny little space that you're creating that you're going to be able to give yourself time to make a different choice in how you're going to handle the situation. Even if that tiny little thing different is to lower your voice, to take a bigger breath, right? Or take a second longer before you can respond. When you're able to do that, this is when you're disrupting the pattern. And that right there is what matters the most. So I'm going to put you to work today. It's something very, 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 very simple. Try to work it throughout the week. And that thing is just choose one pattern, just one, not all of them at once, but just one. So choose something. How do you react when your child doesn't listen? How does your tone shift when you're starting to feel stress? Don't change it. Just observe it. Give yourself that tiny little more space where you can actually step back for a fraction of a second and just observe it. You're not trying to change anything at this point. You're just observing. This is the moment, and we'll be able to work on that afterwards. So when you start noticing that there's a pattern, then that's when you're going to start asking yourself, when does this happen? All right. So you're going to find that cue, that entry point. Then you're going to ask yourself, how does it feel in my body just before it happens? And how does it feel in my body in the moment? There will be a shift there. So you're going to start noticing that you're allowing yourself a little bit more space so that you're going to be able to observe a little bit more on the pattern itself. So just remember that the goal is not to change the behavior right now, it's to notice it. And as you're doing it, this is the best part, and I think it's what makes it happen a lot faster is while you're working on that, you're also teaching your child. So when they're having their moments, ask them once they've calmed down, how does that feel in your body? What happened in your body? And start giving them that awareness so that they can pick it up a lot faster than we do. So just make sure that you remember that the goal is not to change the behavior right now. The goal is to be aware of the pattern. And that is going to change everything for you for the rest of the year. So I want to just give you a hint of positivity in this and to tell you that you did not fall off track with whatever parent you saw yourself being in January this year to what you are at right now as you're listening to this episode. Just remember that you didn't fall off track. You just fell back into your patterns. And now that you know why this is happening, you're now able to work on becoming the parent that you've always wanted to be. So I'm going to leave you with that. If you have any other information, you can always reach out. I am a real person. And I'm hoping this will help. Give yourself grace. We don't need to make this an extra task to add to what's already stressing us out. Just the fact that you're noticing it right now, you're just light years ahead of what you were back in January. So remember that. Don't forget to follow, and subscribe to whichever channel you're listening or watching from. And don't forget to have a look at the 3 previous seasons to see if there's anything there that will resonate with you. And as always, stay safe, stay awesome, and we'll talk soon.